Today on Dice and Dragons, I've got a guest host, maybe a more frequent host as well. This is Mike Esty. So, say hi to everyone, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are going to be reviewing Space Base. Don't worry, for those of you that love Julie's commentary, she will be back. She just did not get a chance to play this game, and she wanted a break. Let's be real, I started this with Sam. She came on. She wanted a little bit of a break, but you will see her again. So, Space Base by AEG, designed by John D. Clare. I almost said John LeClaire. That's what happens. We're in Montreal. I love my Habs. So, in any case, Mike, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit more about the game itself?
Yeah, it's a game for 2 to 5 players. Takes about 60 minutes for ages 14 and up. For us, the first game took probably 2 hours as we're learning it.
Yeah, well, we did have about 4 people playing the game, so getting everyone to figure it out and really figure out the engine of the game. The gameplay mechanics aren't really all that complicated. It's really just sort of putting it all together with 4 people that think very differently, I think is a good way to put it. But
definitely.
After that, I think we got it down to about 60 minutes. Now I'll tell you just a little bit about the game. So this is a dice chucking game and also an engine building game. So you have a board. You guys are going to see it in the components and how to play. Board, you're going to be managing your spaceships, and you're going to be rolling dice. Now the very interesting thing about this is that when you roll your dice, your opponent, for those ships they have then deployed from their base, can also gain resources as well. So you're going to have to pay attention on every turn. Something that I think we both agree is not typical of your dice chucking and engine management games. So with that being said, we are going to take it to the table. So we're going to grab our drinks, grab our buddy, and
cheers.
Take it to the table.
Oh, that's a good beer.
It's a great beer. Now we're going to take a look at the components in Space Base. So this will just be a quick overview. After we cover the components, we're going to take a closer look at the level 1, level 2, and level 3 ship cards. There are a lot of different things that you can do with those ship cards. Luckily, the rulebook has a nice reference guide on the back, and it is a nice piece of work. Now, when you take a look at it, we do get a little bit of flavor text explaining the Space Base, has a nice component overview, but I'll just flip through a couple pages here, and you'll realize it does explain the concepts, which I do think is an important part. There isn't really a quick start guide, meaning set up the game, follow the rules, start playing, and then go through the rule book. Now, someone should definitely read it beforehand, but learning to play as you play the game is sort of what I would recommend. Now, let's move on from that and take a look at the other components. So here we've got our player board with 12 different slots. Now, that's for your ships. You have the tracking tokens, the blue, yellow, and green ones, which correspond to the different resources. As you can see here, 3 different resource tracks. Your 6-sided die, got 2 little rocket ships. I like it, it's a little bit of flavor. But if anything happens to them, you can replace them with any other 6-sided die. Then here you've got your charge tokens, which you'll be using when you're trying to charge up a card with these squares. Now, it can work for blue or the red squares. We'll talk more about that once we actually get into how to play, as well as take a look at the cards. Now, taking a look at the player boards, and before I forget, there are 5 of them. You can see the other 4 right there. We will now move on to the colony cards as well as the starting cards. So these are the colony cards. I stacked them right here, but I put them out over here. What they do, and I'm going to just explain them because I'm not going to do more detail. You purchase the card, you score these victory points. So these are great ways to score victory points, but if they do get onto your player board, like, well, this would be a 6, they kind of kill that spot, so it doesn't work as well. Keep that in mind before you purchase any of these colony cards. Now let's look at the starting player decks. There are 5 of them. They contain ships, so I'll just flip one over. Ships like 12, and there are 12 cards to fill your board. And that's why there are just 5 starting player decks, because you can only play 5 players. So I've taken a look at that. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at the ship cards. Now we have our level 1 ship cards, level 2, and level 3. Typically, the power does scale up in terms of some of the stuff that they can do. For example, this 11 can buy you 14, whereas this 12 can only buy you 11. 11 is typically a little bit easier to roll than a 12, but at the same point in time, you never know how things are going to go. There is a level of randomness to the game, but don't forget, power levels tend to scale up. But I do want to highlight one thing. You can get some very good cards at every level. So, I mean, 4 rocket ships, 4 and 11 early on can be great. 7 gold at a level, for a 10 spot early on in the game when you buy it for only 2. Don't worry, I'll explain all of that stuff. It's just, me talking about it now is just a way to showcase level 1, level 2, and level 3 ships, depending on what they can do, are a big part of building your engine. So don't ignore any level. Don't focus on one level. They are all part of winning this game. Now that we've talked about all the components, it's time to move on. So I'm going to rock it off, change the setup right here, and then we will take a deep dive, or maybe not a deep dive, but close to it, into the ship cards. Keep it right here. We'll be back faster than it took the Apollo missions to get to the moon. Now we're going to take a look at the ship cards in Space Base. Here is your legend. If you're wondering what level these ships are, you can see on this secondary player board. Now, I just want to highlight this card that I neglected to mention in the components. Starting player card, it's very important for scoring at the end of the game because everyone has to have an equal number of turns. So make sure you know who the starting player was. We'll now take this off camera. And before we go too far into looking at the ships, I want to just talk a little bit about how to play. So essentially you want to activate, and let me just straighten these up a little bit, these different ships on your player board. To do that, you need to make a die roll. In this case, we have rolled a 7, 5, and a 2, meaning we can either activate the 7 space or the 5 and the 2. And that's what you're going to be doing as you play the game. But don't forget, you can act during an opponent's turn. So we will talk about that as we take a look at the ships and their abilities. So first what we'll do is we'll review the 4 level 1 cards, then we'll do the level 2, followed by the level 3. As you can see, there was a large variety of abilities just on these cards, so I will not be covering all the different ones in the game. There are just too many, but what I've selected here is a good representation of a lot of the different abilities. So even if you find something that's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more cool, you should be able to figure it out. Now, the one thing I didn't take out there are some cards that let you switch sectors of your ships, meaning something that can only go in a sector 12 or sector 9, 8, or 7. If you get a card that says swap those 2 sectors, you're allowed to do it. That's the only ability type I did not take out. Now, that being said, we're moving on. We're talking about the level 1 cards. And before we go too much into their abilities, we also need to cover the breakdown of a card itself. Here we've got the cost you need to pay to purchase the card, the sector that it goes in, its value when you trigger it on your turn, its value if it's deployed that you can trigger on an opponent's turn. Now, how will you deploy cards? Well, we'll give you a quick example here. In this case, this is a 4. So for example, that's a little bit of a pun. If I purchase this card, it would go on the 4 slot. This card then gets deployed, meaning if the opponent rolls, we got a 5 and a 2, had rolled a 4, you can then trigger this ability during their turn. That was just a quick explanation. We'll set everything back up the way it was, and we'll continue on to the next card. So first thing 1, purchase power. Here we've got the rocket ship, which represents 1 victory point, which is your blue track right here. We've got the 10, which is also level 1, which actually gives you purchasing power and a planet. Now, planets are your permanent income. So in this case, you would go up to 5 if you were lucky enough like this, you're just building. And this means that you can never go below 1. Better example would be, let's say you've got 5. You want to buy an expensive ship. And sorry that I moved that, people. That is worth, 14. Well, you can never go below this 5. So I'll put these things back to their starting position because the last card that I want to showcase is the 11. Now the 11 has 2 arrows, meaning when you roll 11, you trigger both abilities, meaning you trigger your 10 and your 12 spot. So those cards are pretty cool, and you'll notice also, before I forget, when it's deployed, it still triggers both. So these are great things to get into the field because depending on the number of players you have, it might be worth more value to you being deployed than actually on your player board. So those were the level 1 ships. Let's take a look at the level 2. Now, what this means is that we can charge the card. You'll notice that this has 2 different sets of arrows. Now, to charge the card, we would have to trigger it. So for example, let's say, we got a 4 and a 5. It's actually perfect to have right out. We could trigger the 5 spot and the 4, meaning we can charge it. Now, anything blue can be spent during your turn. Red can only be spent during an opponent's turn. Now, if you charged it, you can also in the same turn decide to spend your cube. You can then trigger spaces 5 and spaces 6 because it's got 2 arrows. If it's deployed, you'll notice that it can only trigger 1 space because it's got 1 arrow. So that is the first of our level 2 cards. Now this one is very interesting. And this is a great card to get because you can really build out your deployment here. This one, you can charge it, and then on your turn, whenever you want to on your turn, doesn't have to be the same turn you charge it, you can claim 3 level 1 cards by spending the charge. Just remember that with regards to charging a card, if it's charged, you can't use it again. And I've made a mistake, guys, and I don't want to go back. I've noticed this is actually a 12. This should not be in the 7 spot. So I actually don't have a proper 7 sector card. But it's a good example because there are cards that you can say swap sectors. So if you'd had that card, you could potentially take something from sector 12 and maybe move it to 7. I don't remember what the cards are, but I will try to find something. But I just caught that mistake. It's because there's the 7 purchase power. So you know what? I made this mistake, but it's good for you guys. Don't make the same mistake that I did. Now, another level 2 card here that requires multiple charges. Now you'll notice that this is, you see these 3 charges, and then you've got this symbol right here. Now this symbol tells you how many different player counts you're going to be needing to charge it here. So if I'm not mistaken, when you've got 5, it means that in a 5-player game, you need to go up to 3 charges. Whereas on a 2-player game, you can go up to 2 charges. You can check the rule book. It is there, and it is quite detailed. Now, we've taken a look at the level 2 cards. Let's move on to the level 3. We'll start with the Big Daddy in the back here because it is an interesting one. With this one, you can actually just win the game. It also has a very great deployed ability of getting you 10. And you notice that there's different levels that you have to get up to. So in anything less than a 5-player game, it's 4. You get up to the 5-player game, you need to get it up to 5. Very interesting ability. Now this one, the 8, fairly cool. You can claim 2 level 1 cards whenever you roll an 8. And if you, so just use that as an example. Very cool. If you do happen to get it deployed, now once you will charge it when it's deployed on an opponent's turn, you can only spend it to trigger this ability, claim 1 level 2 card during your next turn. Which is kind of annoying because you can't charge it multiple times and get a lot of stuff, but still very good. This 3 right here, you can charge it up a few times to get 3 purchasing power. Now you may be wondering why you want to use something like this. And there's another card, probably should have got it out, but there are cards that will let you move charge from one card to another. And they can be anywhere on a card, meaning this thing is a great way to store charges and then trigger stuff later on, or store some charges here, then move into your 12 to try to win the game. And then another interesting level 3 card here is this one. Takes 2 charges to spend. So before I make a mistake, guys, don't remember. This is the amount of charges that you need. And actually, I did misexplain anything. You see this, I'm going to pick up this one here. You see this symbol right here? This means that it takes 3 charges. you need to spend all of them at once, whereas this means you can spend one charge to get that because they are not linked. So very cool. You can charge this up twice. Once you spend one of these charges before rolling, set one die instead of rolling it. So you can charge it up 2 times, so you can use it on multiple turns. This one you can charge up 3 different times. Now, I know this was a little bit long, but I wanted to give you guys, for those of you that are interested, a chance to take a look at this ship overview. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to reset everything. We're probably going to be a little bit more zoomed out. We're going to set up the game, and then I'll go through a couple of turns to teach you guys how to play. Now we're going to go over how you set up space. So I've got a compressed space right here. That's why I'm not showing the opponent's score track. I have it off camera, and I've already gone ahead and set up their ships just to keep things a little bit more simple. Now what you're going to want to do is find some room on the table. You've got your level 1, level 2, and level 3 cards. You want 6 ships of each. Now the rulebook tells you to do it a little bit differently. I like getting my play space set up before I do the next part. What you then do is you decide, every player sets their starting value for their purchasing power to 5. They will take a random level 1 card. In this case, it is a card that is worth 3. You deduct 3 from your starting value, take the ship, and shuffle it back in the deck. Because you guys can't see the score track, I'm not doing it for the other player, but you do that for every single player. Now, one thing I want to highlight, I don't have all the colony cards out. You should have all of them out. They're all visible. I just stacked them here so you could see it. Like I said, once again, compressed space. Now, just so you can get an idea, that is what a 4-player setup should look like. And as you'll see, all the colony cards are available. Don't make that mistake. Just wanted to highlight it. And now we will continue on. Now I've got my charge tokens out. 6 of each ship is available. Starting player has been assigned as the opponent. And just to see the last part that we need to do is we need to place our ships. Now we've got our starting deck, the blue one here. Color really doesn't matter. So we just start placing them in the sector as per the top of their card. Eight, 11, 12, 10, 9, and 1. Now I'm just going to straighten out all the cards, fix that one that I knocked as well. Now the game is set up. We need to grab the die, and we are ready to play. So as you can see, very simple, easy to set up. I know it's a little busy, guys. What I'm going to probably do is change the camera setup just a little bit so that you can see how you play the game. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the opponent's turn, but let me try to get this all spaced out so it looks a lot better. But you've seen how to set up a 2-player game. Just so you know, in 3, 4, or 5-player games, there are other things that you need to do with regards to extra bonuses. And before I forget, in a 2-player game, so always, the second player gets a bonus 1 for their purchasing power. Now, in other player games, other player counts, it could be, a bonus planet, bonus rocket ship, depends on the player. So, game is set up. Let me try to adjust things just a little bit. I actually might just completely get rid of the colony cards as we teach you guys the basics of how to play the game. Now we're going to go over how to play space. So what I've decided to do is get rid of the level 2 cards, the level 3 cards, and the colony cards. So I've got this decent play space right now because I only want to go through 1 or 2 turns. The real intricacies of the game will show up later on, and that's really something that I can't teach you guys in a how to play. So I'll be playing both sides, and we'll be using the level 1 cards. Now just so it's clear to everyone, I will draw a random card. This is a 4, meaning that our opponent, our player over here, has only 1 purchasing power, and they are the starting player. Don't worry, I've got my track. It's visible to me. I know what they have. So we will roll the die and see what we get. So we get a 6 and a 3, which we can then use as a 9. As my team right here, the player that you can see everything of. Doesn't have anything deployed. There is nothing they can do during this turn. Now the 9 gets 1 planet, or it can be used as a 6 and a 3 to gain 2 purchasing power. I'm just sliding the track up because we need to buy something here. Now, what do we want to buy? We don't want to spend too much. We'll buy the 4. Now this 4 costs 2. We will then take the 4 we have here, deploy it, making it active during our opponent's turns. And then the 4 goes in the spot. At the end of the turn, we then draw a new card. Don't forget we need to adjust the score. I know it's a little off camera, but it's just so I don't forget. Done it for myself. We're then good to go. It is now the second player's turn. We roll the dice. We get a 1 and a 2. Not great. Gets us up to 5 purchasing power. And we needed to get some good stuff. And during your turn, you can only buy 1 card. So and I wanted to highlight that because we're up to 5, meaning I could buy a 3 and a 2 technically. But you know what? That's not the way it works. It's only 1 card during your turn. Best card that's out there right now is the 10 because of what it gives you. Place this on your board. Deploy the other one. We go down to 2. And then it's once again the opponent's turn. And we put out another card. So we'll roll the die, see what happens. A 4 and a 1. We do not have anything deployed with those. Nothing we can do. We can either take the 5 right there, because that's what it makes. It's only 1. Makes more sense to grab 2, bringing him back up to 3. What do we want to do? Get some stuff deployed. Get something more interesting. 7s are typically solid as they come up fairly often. And if you guys want some strategy, don't forget there's a nice concept the concept of the game explanation. And let me just slide that under here. Perfect. That cost him 2. Slide him back down to 1. We then draw another card. As play will then pass to the next player. And we're just going to keep going back and forth like this. I was hoping to get something up. Perfect. So we got a 4 and a 1 to a 5. We would then do 4 and 1 here. Going up. So we only had 5, 3, 2. Yep, so going up to the 4. But our opponent also has a 4 deployed, meaning they now gain 1 resource. Now we can spend up to 4 on any 1 card. Well, this is the most expensive one, so we'll buy it. Place it on the board. Deploy this one. And once again, turn will pass back to the next player. Now I'm going to go through one last round, then I think that's enough of explaining to you guys how to play, and we'll cut to our review of the game. And just so you guys know, there were a lot of intricacies, but as you can see, it's going to develop as you're building your engine and only show up really in the later game. Ooh, excellent. A 9. Too bad it didn't hit our 10, but we don't have anything deployed. 9 is 1 planet, which can be very good. We're still trying to build this engine. And 5 and a 4 is going to be the best thing. Gain 2, which brings them up to 4. They'll take... Now, this is a great example just to show you how you can certainly build up in certain spots. Spending 4, you can get multiple cards deployed. So there is no limit here. And I'm going to get this nicely slid under. So that 4 now becomes a money-making machine, but our opponent's now down to 0. We go over to the next turn. This will be the last die I roll. 4 and a 1, great for them, because this place now is gaining them 2. So that's pretty cool. We don't have anything good. We're just going to gain, and I apologize, I neglected to move this down to 0. We only gain 2 this turn. Nothing all that great at 2. rocket ships can be great early on in the game, but I typically like to get those in this spot. But we need to get some good stuff going. Maybe get, you know what? Oh, we only have 2, unfortunately. Otherwise, this 12 would be a good choice. Just buy the 1. There's been a fair bit of 1s rolled. I know that's not the best logic. Buy the 1. Get the 1 deployed so we get more earners. Go down to 0. Draw another card. Play a little pass back and forth. So you guys really saw me just buying a lot of ships very quickly and easily because I'm only using the level 1 cards. You can save up. You don't need to buy a card on your turn. Just want to highlight that because that's how you're really going to be able to buy those level 2 and level 3 cards. So now I'm going to rocket out of here and we'll be back with our review of the game. So Mike, what did you think of Space Base? And also, first time on video, guys, so please be nice. Well, maybe not first time on video, but first time on a YouTube video, I think.
Being on video is a lot more nerve-wracking than playing the game. No, I thought it was a fantastic game. It's interesting to get a new game that you can jump into and really enjoy it. There's not a huge amount of instructions, so it doesn't take you, all day to learn how to play the game. You jump into it pretty quick, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
No, I have to agree with you on that. One of the things we found, especially the first time we played, even though it took us probably about 2 hours, because we had 4 different personalities that learned 4 different ways, so it was just really figuring it all out to put it all together. But we really learned as we played, and this is one of the games where I'll tell you, you can read the rule book, read the setup, but just start throwing the dice, and as stuff come up, as things look interesting, that's when you're probably better off going through the rule book to see what they actually do and make the right decisions to build your engine. But I mean, the first time we played it, I think the answer from everyone right afterwards was, again?
Yeah, right away, everybody just really raring to go.
No, we had a nice game night going on. We were looking to play like 2 or 3 different games, and I think this one ended up.
Played it the most for sure. Yeah.
So what's your favorite part about the game itself?
It's pretty dynamic. You get to select get the option to select so many different cards to build your engine, as you said. And as you're going, I mean, every game's going to be so completely different. We just played a game, and it took us very short time, and you kicked my butt pretty good.
Yeah, but then...
And it's just because of the different selections that we both got. So.
Yeah, it was different selections, different rolls. The reason why I got ahead was I got an 11, and for whatever reason, the 11 came up, like 3 or 4 times in early play, and I felt like I was losing because I was getting victory points, but nothing to build my engine. So Mike's building his engine, but then eventually, like, the victory points have just kept adding up.
Suddenly I'm way behind. That's right, That's how it goes.
No, and what did you think of the art for the game? It's a little bit different. It's not necessarily your...
It's a little bit comic-y.
Yep.
I like that. It's kind of fun. I don't pay attention to art as much as a lot of people do. I concentrate more on the playing, but yeah, it's decent.
No, I enjoy the art. I think that the art actually makes it more welcoming, especially as this is sort of a family game. I think that's one of the things that I don't think we can stress enough in terms of, like, this is complicated. It's people that are good at engine building, deck building, and like the intricacies, you have a potential for a very deep game. However, if you feel like not crushing your in-laws, I know, crushing in-laws is something that a lot of people that watch this channel probably love to do, but you can definitely take this out with the in-laws and you can have a nice family game night.
Yeah.
And just still use some of those intricacies to just beat them. No, don't demolish them. Save that for when you're playing against your wife. So, other than that, what would you say that is like sort of the negative aspect of the game? If there's anything that you did not like as much?
That's a good question, actually. I'm not a huge fan of having to move cards around a lot, and as you noticed, I was having trouble like putting cards underneath cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That kind of annoys me a little bit, but I mean, that's really nitpicky, so I really don't have any other negatives.
No, the only negative I would say that really came up, and this is probably only came up once so far, was we were playing a 2-player game and we literally got 1 for the 5 slot.
That's true.
Yeah, so there is a level of randomness. Now you can build your engine around it, and typically if the randomness is being really annoying, it's not affecting one player, which is something that I really dislike, but it typically affects all players. So gets a little bit of a knock in my book for that slight little bit of randomness. And I don't love the way the colonies work necessarily, but those do need to work that way because they're such big pieces of scoring.
Yeah.
Now, I think we've talked enough about the game. So, Mike, what would you give this game on a score of 1 to 10?
I think it's an easy 8.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Mike. This is definitely an 8. It's a very solid game. This game impresses. I think that if you are someone that likes the game with the family, that also likes deep, complicated games, this sort of fits the entire bill. You're going to be able to get this out in a great many occasions. I would actually even love if it played more players almost. Not exactly the same way, but
Could be interesting.
it'd be interesting to see this as like a 6 or 7 player game with some different rules to make everything go faster. At least the concept, I think, is there. But you can play this with anyone, and at you're looking I'd say about a $30, and talking Canadian, so a $25, $30 price point Canadian USD there. I think this is a very good value.
Well worth it.
Yeah. So with that being said, we're gonna grab our drinks, grab our buddy, and don't forget videos popping up above our heads. Like, comment, subscribe. If you like Mike on the videos, let us know. If you're nice to him, he may come back and do more stuff. It is his first time, so gotta pop that cherry sometime. And don't forget, keep playing games. So not too bad, first time doing this.
It's good.